Hello, everyone, and welcome to The Love of Business. This is the inaugural broadcast of The Love of Business here at prconnectionsradio.com. My name is Guy Dawson, and I am the managing member of Classy Communications, a full-service public relations and marketing company. And I am here with my good friend, Jed Wallace. He is with Atlas Integrated Security. It is a security company based here in Las Vegas, and he is the first ever guest of The Love of Business. And this is a podcast that is been several months in the making, and we have big plans of what we're going to do with The Love of Business. Who doesn't love business? What this podcast is all about, it's about bringing out the love of business in others, getting other people like Jed, who I know loves business, to talk about what it is that gives them the passion to push forward and continue to work towards their goals in entrepreneurship. And so welcome to the show, Jed. And this is a great opportunity. Jed and I are working together, me as his public relations and marketing representative, and it's his first ever podcast, and I'm just thrilled to be doing it with him. Welcome, Jed.
Thank you. Thank you. Really appreciate being on today.
So as I had mentioned in the intro, the love of business is all about what it is that makes you love doing what you do in business. And maybe we could start with your background in getting your company started. What got you started in your business?
So I ended up starting in this industry after I transitioned out of the military. I served for several years in the Air Force, working as a flight line troop, so making sure the airplanes get off the ground, do what they need to do. Ended up transitioning into civilian life and found that my skill sets were a really good fit for being able to solve problems, and applied that to the security scope pretty easily.
And I know that we've had a lot of talks about your passion for understanding the way that things work, and that for you is something that you get a tremendous amount of satisfaction out of. Will you go into more details about that? Because how things work for certain people, it inspires that, and for others, how do you explain that?
Well, to start, I was sort of disappointed with myself at 8 years old that I hadn't taken apart the family car and put it back together again. So I've always had an intense desire to understand how particularly technology works, how a piece of machinery works, or a computer. I built my very first computer from at a young age. I got into programming, played with electronics, and then working with aircraft in particular. My job as a weapons troop, I was in charge of everything from the button the pilot pressed to the munition arriving on target. So there were a ton of different systems that all interconnected. And that's basically what security does, is it takes a bunch of different technologies, a bunch of different systems, applies them together, and tries to make them work in a cohesive sense for the easiest use for the customer and to protect the security of everyone involved. So my wife often jokes that I don't actually use anything. I just buy it and take it apart and put it back together again. And that holds true when it comes to security equipment and security interfaces. So I have a much more, that provides me the opportunity to develop a much more deep-seated understanding of how does a camera work, how does a door work, how do locks work, how does layer 3 switching work in your environment, and then applying those technologies and those skill sets to improve security and accessibility at the same time.
And I know in some of our talks, Jed, we've talked about you needing to get into the mindset of thinking like another person in terms of what their patterns are and the way that they do things, and how instrumental that is in you being able to create the proper security, be it doors or cameras. Would you like to talk about that in terms of understanding the thought process of people?
Well, I mean, with any piece of technology, the biggest hurdle that needs to be overcome, honestly, is not how technical people use it, but how everybody else uses it. So the same holds true when you're dealing with a security application. I need to understand how does the nurse in the NICU of a hospital use her doors. What she doesn't think about it, obviously. She's got other things on her mind. She's making sure that these children are safe and alive and well and healing. So she doesn't have time to worry about how the door gets used. She just wants it to work. But I have to understand, what's her daily process like? What's her pattern like? How does she interact with it? Is she carrying things through the door? Is she holding a lot of stuff? How do people even we have an example recently. How do people store stuff in a room where we want to keep track of what's going on inside there? Well, they tend to store things at eye level and slightly above, and that makes it difficult for us to properly pre-place camera positions, and make sure that we can see what's going on, help track inventory, that sort of thing. So it's a big part of understanding what the end user is doing, how their daily operations are, and understanding that allows me to find the right tools, the right pieces and parts, and combine them together correctly to provide the best security we can in a seamless way that they don't even notice that it's there in a lot of ways.
And security is such an important part of all aspects of business, be it cybersecurity or physical security, which you, with your integrated aspect of your company, you're really kind of involved on both sides because you're working with a lot of technology and yet you've got a lot of very physical things that you're dealing with as well. Locksmithing. I know there's a technology with doors, but there's also a physical component of that. Will you speak to the integrated aspect of what it is that you do?
Sure. So, with the integrated aspect of what we do is that, and this is part of the reason we started our company as opposed to just working for other companies, is it requires several different skill sets. So, if you were to, let's take a door, for example, a door at a NICU, it needs to be locked to make sure that people just don't come in and harm the children or interrupt the nurses or any of that. It needs to open freely to allow things like fire emergency exit, to allow the nurses to move through. Particularly now, we're worried about a lot of contact surfaces. So, an automatic door that opens without you having to touch anything, but it still needs to be controlled. So, we have to have an access control system of some kind. Well, mechanically, that has to physically lock the door and physically unlock the door when we move things around and when we're opening and closing the door. So, knowing how the physical aspects of locksmithing, of door hardware work, and then combining that with the electromechanical and hydraulic systems of an automatic opener to make the door physically swing back and forth when it's supposed to. Electronic security and safety and motion sensors to make sure that the door doesn't swing open too fast and hit somebody, or too slow and get run over when you're trying to rush a patient bed from one section to another. Um, and then all of these things now are connected to your network, right? It uses a TCP communication to communicate again, in a hospital, you often have key card access. So you scan your key card and that sends signals back database that approves or denies your request, and then has to send signals back out to the opening. And there's more electronic components there that interpret that and decide, what are we going to do now? Are we going to open the door? Are we just going to unlock it? Are you too close? Are you too far away? All of those sorts of things. So having an idea of how that all works together and then fully integrating that so that we're properly segregating your VLANs, you don't have to worry about cybersecurity intrusions. We're basically trying to prevent those crime movies where they hack in and unlock all of your doors remotely from their van. We don't want that to happen. And we also don't want people to be able to physically break in as well. It's a multiple disciplinary field. And there aren't very many integrators that can do all of it from start to finish.
And I guess your ability to be able to do that, Jed, speaks to what you were talking about when we started this interview today, and that is this curiosity that you have about seeing the process all the way through and being able to see beginning to end and to be able to create a diagram in between that allows all of this integration that you were just talking about.
Absolutely, absolutely.
So you've been in business for a couple of years, and of course, anyone who's running a company understands that it's not necessarily the way that it is on TV, where it's a glamorous life where everything just goes and you've got this stack of money that you make and you're cutting the big business deal, like you'll see on these shows on TV, and it's not really like Shark Tank either. But what is it about running this company that makes you love doing it? Because I know that you really love running your company.
I have the unrestricted ability to solve people's problems using my company. And when you're in an employer-employee relationship, you have to do what your boss tells you to do, the way your boss tells you to do it. And the freedom for me to be able to truly solve problems. That's what I really love. I really love being able to solve a problem, whether it be a truly security related problem. Often they're access related problems. They have a door, it's not doing what they want. It ends up being more of a wall, stopping business flow. They have cameras, but they can't actually see what they think they should be able to see. Even process problems. They think they have a solution as far as equipment goes, but the reality is there's a better way using something simple. Take, for example, your home. Often people want us to install very intricate, expensive security systems with a lot of cameras in order to cover everything. When the reality is with your home, putting a sign in your front yard, putting some motion sensitive lights on the outside, and being good neighbors is a far better deterrent than any advanced camera system I can put in. So I can't say that to people if I'm an employee. I can't tell them, you really shouldn't buy this. You should buy this other thing that's not nearly as expensive. As a business owner, I can work with them to find what the real root problem is that maybe they can't identify properly, and help them come up with solutions that better fit time, budget, requirements, those sorts of things. So that's my real joy and drive. And then on top of that, I get to make my own time. So I'm able to spend time with my kids. I'm able to spend time with my wife. I'm able to prioritize when somebody thinks that there's an end of the world situation, and I can say, well, we can do something to fix this until Monday comes around, and then we can work on it then. I can still have that family time. So I think that pretty well covers it.
Yeah, that really speaks to why you're doing this, and that's really what this podcast is all about. It's about going in deeper and understanding why we as entrepreneurs do what we do. And you brought up some really interesting points about being able to create your own world based on the way that you design your business, the way that you want to see it run, feeling good about being able to take care of your customers in the way that you want to take care of them. And there is a lot of responsibility that goes with that. But for anyone who is serious about their business, taking on that responsibility, that's what I got out of what you were talking about. It's well worth it. It's well worth it because you're getting the job done the way that you want it to be done and the way that you feel you're going to be able to fulfill the needs of your customers.
Yeah, absolutely. And another big part of that too, and why we business is switching back on the integration part of this. There are in the construction process, I don't know how many people know about this, but in the construction process, you have carpenters that work on your doors, you have electricians that provide your power, you have a low voltage company that will install your your alarm system or your camera system or your access control system. And oftentimes those three group, and then you have IT, who sets up your actual network infrastructure. Well, oftentimes those four groups of people don't know how the other groups work, don't know exactly, a carpenter is not expected to know what a layer three switching system does or how to set up routing tables. An electrician is not necessarily expected to know what the difference between a 5 megapixel 180 and a 6 megapixel dome camera really looks like and its applications. So being able to cover all of those with a good level of knowledge in each one of those areas allows us to ensure that each of those individual pieces is working together for the end product, which is what the GC or the project manager really cares about. They don't really care very much about what the individual bells and whistles are. They care about how does it work all together? Does it work all together? And so we saw a real gap in the market there with that. A lot of people were good at their specialized areas, but there were not very many that were good in multiple areas. And to my knowledge, and feel free to correct me if I'm wrong in the comments, but to my knowledge, we're one of the only companies in the Las Vegas Valley that can do everything from locksmithing, doors, frames, all the way up through network infrastructure, gunshot detection, analytics, and the like. So that was a real big drive to try to provide a solution to what we saw as a problem.
Well, it's been great to hear you share about your love of business, Chad. And I have only one more question for you. If you could share with an aspiring entrepreneur a tip about how to develop a love for their business, what would that tip be?
How to develop a love for their business. I would say find something that you really enjoy doing and figure out how to turn that into a business. I really enjoy tinkering, taking things apart and putting them back together again. When I'm in the thick of that, I rarely feel like I'm working. It just is a lot of fun, making sure all these pieces work together. So that's the real rub. Find what you like to do. It's like that old ad, isn't it? Do what you enjoy doing, and you'll never work again a day in your life. That's the trick.
Yeah, I agree with you there. I mean, just what we're doing here right now, Jed, along with, the other things I do in PR and marketing, but this is so enjoyable for me to interview people, especially people who I know are very serious about their business and are great at it. And absolutely, this is like it's like your birthday party when you're 5 years old for me. Every time I do one of these broadcasts, it's so fun and interesting. And
The other thing that I would add to that is don't be afraid. You are absolutely 100% going to mess up. But I found that starting wasn't as hard as I thought it would be. I figured there would be miles of paperwork and forms and registrations in this up and setting that up, setting the other thing up. The SBA is frankly a Small Business Administration, and they're able to walk you through all of those steps pretty easily. So starting out wasn't as difficult as I thought. And the reality too is everybody is making mistakes. Everybody is doing something wrong. We do things like my company, we make mistakes as well. And it's not about whether or not you make the mistake. It's more about what do you do next? You pick yourself up again so you can get back on the horse, that sort of a thing. So just don't be afraid of it.
excellent advice, Jed. And how can people get in contact with you if they need a high quality integrated security company like Atlas?
Well, you can visit us online at ais.vegas, and you definitely reach out to us and give a call at 702-546-8906. And you can also get a hold of us at atlas@ais.vegas.
put this in the chat box really quickly. Oop, it's going to say Vegas, and that's not what it's supposed to say. It's supposed to say AIS dot Vegas. There we go. Smartphones, right? You have to make them
Right.
smart.
Yep. Yep. You got to correct there. Gotta love
Well,
it.
thank you so much, Jed, for being the first guest that we've ever had on the Love of Business. And for all of you, you can look forward to a host of broadcasts. By the way, me not being the primary podcaster of these Love of Business podcasts here at prconnectionsradio.com, we have several other podcasters who we're going to be introducing you to in the coming months who will be hosting these shows and doing interviews with other interesting business people like Jed. The love of business is something that we're very passionate about, and we want to share the stories of great entrepreneurs with the world. So stay tuned for more of the love of business. We'll be announcing the next podcast over on the PR Connections business page on Facebook and elsewhere. Have a happy Friday, and see you again for the next broadcast.